It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics, on testosterone, on hosts of other things, but mainly related to performing and functioning and feeling well. I am your host, Ryan Michael Ballo. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Do it now. Hit the bell to get notified. Get the YouTube app, and you get notified in real time of all the content that comes out. A couple products support this broadcast. You guys know the deal. Super quickly, we have two nootropic stacks. One is the Cortex stack. Secondarily, the Torque stack. You can get those in the description below at livecortex.com. And lastly, you can hire me in under a minute for biohacking consulting at livecortex.com. All right, buddies, friends, confidants, and fellow biohackers. Let's talk about whether or not TRT is better than anti-anxiety medication. The answer is, and look, this is super complex, so I'm going to get into nuances and benefits and drawbacks of both, but my overall assessment is it depends. Now, obviously, there are profound pitfalls to using benzodiazepines, not the least of which is GABA A receptor potential dysregulation or downregulation. Benzos, this is kind of a common misconception. Anti-anxiety medication like Xanax and other benzodiazepines actually don't bind directly to GABA A receptors. They create a greater affinity for GABA to bind to GABA A receptors. So once you get off of a benzo, which is, people have a real fucking rough time doing that, the brain is used to all of this GABA binding right to the receptor sites because of this high affinity upgrade, this affinity enhancement of GABA to the receptor from the benzo. Importantly, and this is something that gets overlooked substantially and why people have withdrawals coming off of benzodiazepines, and that is that a hijacking of the dopaminergic system of sorts takes place. And that can have all kind of implications and really wreak a bunch of havoc on someone's happiness and well-being and feelings of motivation. And this is one of the reasons people have a hard time, sometimes on benzos, and then also especially when they get off of them. Quickly, before we get to TRT, I'll point you to a paper called Hooked on Benzodiazepines, GABA A Receptor Subtypes and Addiction. And there's a really telling sentence in the abstract which goes like this. These data reveal how benzodiazepines acting through specific GABA A receptor subtypes activate midbrain dopamine neurons and how this may hijack mesolimbic reward system, which is basically the reward pathway. The mesolimbic reward system is actually very complex. It connects directly with the ventral tegmental area in the midbrain, the ventral striatum of the basal ganglia in the forebrain. I will leave that whole chain out of the discussion due to time constraints. Still the point stands that you end up with a GABA withdrawal, and it's not that you're making less GABA after a benzo, it's that again, your brain is used to this super high GABA binding affinity. And when that benzo is not in the way, modulating the GABA A receptors to create that high binding affinity from GABA, well, then you're left with all manner of side effects. This is actually proven, by the way, that it would seem like you have less GABA, but it's really this binding issue because some of the treatment for people that are coming off of benzos are GABA pentanoids, like gabapentin and some others, and what they do is help you to synthesize more GABA, thus making more GABA available to bind to the receptor sites. So those are some of the reasons that going on anti-anxiety medication, if you're a man that has anxiety, may not be a good idea. Obviously, you should talk to your doctor and whatever and weigh all sources of information up, but that's just my take on it. Now let's enter TRT. Now look, I've covered this ad nauseum on this channel, but just to refresh your memory, the thread titled, Has TRT Reduced Your Anxiety? One user stated, I feel my anxiety has lowered tenfold. I'm also exercising more and feeling better about myself. The it is still on my shoulder is still, what? The it is still on my shoulder is still there, but I can usually shrug it off. What? Amazing that I can actually build muscle versus before where I'd work my ass off and get nothing out of it. 140 milligrams a test. I think that's enanthate per week. And yes, that's totally something that happens when you get on exogenous tests or if your testosterone is high. But if it's super low, and I've been there before, you're trying to work out, you're not making gains, you're what the hell's going on? Another user states, yes. And I've tried, so yes to the answer of has TRT reduced your anxiety? He goes, yes. And I've tried every med under the sun for mental issues. It also helps my chronic pain to the point where it's manageable without pain meds. Pretty good anecdote. And another user weighs in and says TRT completely fixed my anxiety and depression. That's not to say that I still can't get anxious or depressed, but on the rare occasions I still deal with either, I'm now able to deal with it on my own versus before TRT, where episodes would last for months despite therapy and good support systems around me. And then the last user that we're going to cover goes, yes, for about 7 to 8 years had anxiety. I had never in my life had anxiety until years ago. And then once I got on TRT, within 6 months, my anxiety was gone. He goes, I will never get off TRT. Now, look, I've also covered this very extensively, but I want to run through it again because it's important. In my research of TRT and how it's relating to neurotransmitters and brain function, and specifically anxiety, I've come to learn a number of things. Number one, high levels of testosterone increase blood flow saturation in brain tissues. It's a process called cerebral perfusion. Now, generally one would think this is good for general cognitive health, for like feeling good and being in a good mood. If you got more blood saturating the tissues of your brain, that's generally a good thing. Two, one thing that's very clear in the literature is that the estradiol that gets sort of synthesized from the aromatization of your testosterone via the aromatase enzyme. So like when you're on TRT or have high levels of test, that's how you actually make your estrogen, from testosterone. And that estradiol has a sensitizing effect on some neurotransmitter receptor sites, and specifically serotonin receptor sites. So if you have greater serotonin binding to receptor sites, you're going to be in a better mood and you probably have less anxiety. Also, research suggests that TRT itself upregulates the SERT, that is the serotonin transporter, and the transporter's sole job is to regulate serotonin homeostasis by clearing it, storing it, recycling it, and then having it available for later use. Number three, look, going on TRT is a lot more likely to get you to want to go to the gym and exercise. I mean, I don't know why you would go on TRT and then like not go to the gym, especially considering you're going to be on TRT, you're going to be synthesizing a lot more protein. It's a process called muscle protein synthesis. It ultimately helps you to build bigger muscles. But, as we all know, I think going to the gym and exercising is going to catalyze a whole host of like other beneficial neurotransmitter reactions, which improve your well-being and improve your sort of mental health, which should reduce anxiety. And being on TRT and or being exposed to high levels of testosterone, or I should say adequate levels of testosterone, does force your brain to release more dopamine. So you have a better, more concentrated, more sort of healthy dopamine profile when you're using TRT. And this is good for men that have anxiety. Number five, TRT usually increases subjective feelings of confidence. I mean, that's one of the main things as a guy that allows you to be confident. Like, I mean, when you're an assertive, dominant male, when you're just like, fucking kill everything you touch in life, like you're just like productive and whatever, you're getting promotions at your job or you're building a company and you're assertive, you get things done. A good degree of that is your testosterone levels. Find any guy that has low test and he's going to be less assertive than a dude who has high test, almost always. And as a result, that's a direct result of having higher levels of confidence. Your mental health is going to be in a lot better of a place and you probably have a lot less anxiety. So what's my take? TRT versus benzos for anxiety? The answer is look, I think you should first, as a disclaimer, I want to get axed by YouTube. I think you should always talk with a medical professional to sort of see what they think, and then you should do your own research and figure out what you may want to do and weigh both of those opinions out. But I mean, I will be honest with you, everything that I have looked at, including consulting men and some women, that were on benzos versus working with many men that have been on TRT over time, and my ability to analyze their biomarkers as well, which I think, plays some sort of role in this, like actual measurable biomarkers, is that the people that were on TRT were generally a lot more cognitively and mentally healthy, less depressed and less anxious than the people that I've worked with that were not on TRT but were on benzos. And again, like as I said before, some of the people that I've worked with in the past, which I don't do anymore with the people coming off of benzos because it's really rough, trying to get them back to homeostasis was really, really difficult. And they had a really rough fucking time. Like, I mean, bad shape mentally. Now, as a complete anecdote, so there's no research to back this up. This is just me telling you this and you're supposed to trust me on that. I have friends and I have acquaintances and I have family members that have been on benzos. And if I look at them over the scope of time, their mental health is really not great. In fact, it's kind of never great. Whereas most men that I know that are on TRT feel pretty bitchin' most of the time. I mean, they get up, go to the gym, they're strong, they have energy, they feel good, their libido is strong, and generally they're in a better place mentally. Now, of course, look, there are exceptions. So this is where this gets a little complex because there are people that, take benzos that it sort of saved their asses, it saved their lives. They were in a really crappy, depressed, sort of anxious state, and the benzos keep them in a great place and they feel good and they really kind of have minimal side effects and they largely feel okay. Their mental health is fine. Now, who's to say what's going to happen when they come off of it? I mean, that's usually when the issues arise. It's usually when significant issues arise. But yeah, I mean, such people do exist. So that's an important thing to make. Like, I'm obviously a little biased because I think TRT is better, frankly, but there is a case for benzos being useful for certain people. And while this is a lot less prevalent, there are men that I have worked with that have been on TRT or that are on TRT that do have anxiety and have mood disorders and have like some degree of depression. But that's usually related to a bad protocol, whether it is bad advice to inject like more frequently or their dose is entirely too high and they're synthesizing far too much estradiol and that's fucking with their mood, because estradiol at high levels absolutely has the ability. Unchecked estradiol can definitely mess with your mood. I mean, think of your average like woman or something that like has high levels of estradiol and is moody and whatever. And as I said before, which I've covered, my experience with being exposed to supraphysiological levels of tests when I was sort of medium high dosing HCG. I got my test up to 1250 and I felt like absolute shit. My anxiety increased, my sleep was really crappy, and I generally just felt unwell. So, I mean, excessive exposure to supraphysiological levels of testosterone, for some people can absolutely make them anxious. So it's really hard to say, but generally, I'll try to make as much of a definitive statement as possible. If it were me and I was sitting with an anxiety disorder, based on everything that I know and all the research that I've looked at and all of the people that I've worked with and all of the people that I've seen in my life that are either on TRT versus benzos, have anxiety disorders, and decide to go one route or the other, would 1,000% extremely confidently go on TRT before touching an anti-anxiety medication. Lastly, super quickly, I want to say that there is something to say about nootropic GABA modulators, things like C-Lank, which do positively modulate the GABA A receptor in somewhat of a similar way, but which does seem to not produce as much withdrawal if you reduce the C-Lank from the picture. And other GABA modulators like fasiracetam, I mean, that stuff's actually worked wonders for clients of mine that have had anxiety disorders, maybe didn't want to go on TRT or wasn't appropriate, or the testosterone levels were just fine. We introduce like sort of in an intelligent cyclic dosing protocol of fasiracetam, and then they get substantial relief from their anxiety. But overall, in my opinion, again, based on everything that I've seen, clients that I've worked with, and the literature that I exposed myself to, and understanding all these mechanisms, I would 1,000% choose TRT over an anti-anxiety medication any day. That's been useful. Thank you so much for being with me. So much more content to come soon. As I said at the beginning, a couple products support this broadcast. And look, we have 2 epic nootropic stacks. I mean, if you want dopamine energy, verbal fluency, a heightened mood, the ability to like do work that you're probably procrastinating on but have mental energy at the same time, buy the Cortex stack. I mean, that stuff is powerful. Imagine like on cue when you need motivation and a heightened mood and just like be in a good place while being productive, that you could just take 2 capsules and within 25 minutes you're in and locked in that flow state. That's what Cortex delivers. You can buy Cortex in the description below. It links right to our website, livecortex.com. You will not regret buying a bottle of Cortex. Secondarily, the most purchased stack on the internet. We've been blowing through inventory since it launched. We almost just ran out because people are just got it on auto ship, and that's Torque. This is 6 to 8 hours of clean stimulant energy. A lot of people hit us up and go, hey man, this is like all day energy. I feel like I haven't felt in years. I'm getting a lot more done. I'm super productive. I feel great. My mood is good, but also cognitively, I'm functioning better. Torque is both like a nootropic and that will enhance cognitive function, memory, processing speed, but also it gives you clean stimulant energy, and a clean stimulant feels really, really good. You can buy Torque right now at livecortex.com. Another stack you will not regret getting. Come here. No, you're being shy. Hi. I love you. If you'd like to hire me, when anything ranging from modulating your testosterone positively to giving you advice on whether or not you should go on TRT, to helping you with mood disorders, establishing large sets of very targeted nootropic stacks, to a host of things in between, but mainly related to performance and energy, you can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com and book a call with me as soon as tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much for being with me. Pleasure hanging out with you. Hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.